Computer. Okay, we are in the midst of our Ecclesiastes class, and we are exploring chapter 5. And let's say our bracha together so that we can learn together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, b'tzivanu, la'asok b'divrei Torah, and it is Shabbat Chukat, and we are in Ecclesiastes, and we have two verses left, I think, in chapter 5. So that means we're starting from verse 18. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I will just say, though, before we do that, we went through a series in the last class of talking about what is the good of his toiling for the wind? Nothing is permanent. Uh, he can take nothing of his wealth to carry with him. And verse 16 says, besides all his days, he eats in darkness with much vexation and grief and anger. And now we have these last two. Oh, and then Hine asher raiti ani tov asher yafeh lechol v'lishto lirot tova b'chol amalo. So what's the point? The point is to enjoy life, to eat and to drink and to see goodness with all of one's toils, that they will toil under the sun, uh, all the work that they do under the sun. Mispar Yemei Chayav, the number of the days of his life, Asher Natan Lo Elohim, which God has given him, Kihu Chelko, because this is one's portion. This is the story of a person. They have X number of years. They eat, they drink, they enjoy the fruits of their labor, and that's what it's about. And to recognize, of course, it's in the context of a belief that there's a God that's the great animator, the great force, that offers providence over all, is watching, and is, in the background, although we don't hear a lot about it. And so here we are with two verses left. This will be an abbreviated class with some great cantillation marks here. Gam kol hadam asher natan lo Elohim osher unechasim vehishlito. Oh, you know what? I'm singing it in Esther trope again. I do that. Lechol mimenu vela. Oh, there we go. Lechol mimenu velaset et chelko velismoach b'amalo zo mitachat Elohim hi gam kol hadam asher natan lo Elohim. Also, uh, when God gives him wealth and possessions, the hishlito lechol mimenu, and they say is permitted by him, which God, regulates him lechol mimenu, to eat from it, v'laseit et chelko, and to carry his portion, v'lismoach b'amalo, and to be joyous in his toils, or in his, they say, in it for his gains. That works too. This matat Elohim he. This is a matana, a gift of God. It is a gift of God, or that is a gift of God. Do we have other translations that are worth noting?
Well, it's
Go ahead,
pretty much the
Sylvia.
same. I think, Pamela, you and I have the same one.
Well, right now, all I'm doing is looking at the Zoom. I don't
Oh.
have one out, so.
Oh, okay.
You
All right,
have the
well,
1917, right, Sylvia?
yeah,
Every
yes,
man
I do.
also to whom God hath given
Yes.
riches and wealth, and hath given him power to eat thereof, and to take his portion and to rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. So this is actually kind of about saying what is the meaning of life, right? We've spent all this time learning from Kohelet what is not the meaning of life, right? The mass accumulation of wealth, um, the vices like eating and drinking in excess, and just like or even learning that these are not what it's about, but this seems to be a statement of what it is about.
Rabbi, what does the Hebrew word mean that in our translation I'm seeing on the Zoom? Riches,
Osher. Osher
osher,
means wealth.
wealth. Okay, so like if you were somebody that didn't have much, would this be like, oh my God, I must have made God mad? I mean, does that what this meaning is, or is it just enjoy what you've been given?
I think it's more the latter, because velaseit et chelko, this is what a person has been given. This is what they are entitled to carry. And there's no correlation to our human. I mean, it's actually it's interesting. I haven't thought of it this way until just now, that maybe there's a Zen component to it. We don't know whether we're going to be born wealthy or poor. We don't know whether during the course of our life we're going to accumulate wealth or not. What all that we can know, it seems, is that anything that we do have is a blessing and is a gift, and not to be so tied up with the question of could I have more. There's not a lot here about the relative worth of a person dependent on whether they've accumulated wealth or not. It's actually very much not that. Vilaseit et chelko means to carry his portion, to eat from what he has, all the wealth and possessions, um, to carry his portion and to be happy with what they've been able to accumulate. So it's less about a hierarchy of whether you've collected it a lot or not. It's more like that teaching that we learned in Pirkei Avot that says, in fact, I think maybe it's last week, because we're doing a chapter a week between uh, in post Shavuot, before Tisha B'av. So we're on chapter 5 right now, and I think it says Edahu Ashir, who is wealthy, right? Ashir, same word as Osher, this word over here, who is wealthy, Hasamech Bechalko, someone who is happy with their portion. Wealth is not about mass consumption or mass material accumulation. It's a more like, in fact, in other places in Ecclesiastes, we've heard this, that he's seen people who have tremendous wealth and are miserable, and he's seen other people that are poor but happy. And to me, what comes out of this is the story of Bancha Schweig, the Yiddish story. I often refer to this. I keep giving it to friends about the story of the man who is kind of a poor schlub, doesn't have a lot of money, but follows God's will to the nth degree, dies, goes up to the heavenly courts, and is drilled about how he lives his life. Bancha says, I davened, I did the things I'm supposed to do, and I was never wealthy, and he's almost unnotable in the world, but he's then granted anything he would ever want post life. And basically, without giving away too much of the punchline, because at the end, the angels ridicule him for the paucity of his request, he basically asks for almost nothing, and the angels laugh at him. Because for him, it's not the conditioning for, you know, thirst and greed and desire to take more and more of the material world. His desire is just to be able to be a little bit more comfortable. That's all he asks. And, the story is an interesting story for a whole bunch of reasons that we don't have time for right now, but it's brilliant. It's a brilliant way for people who don't have a lot of wealth to kind of find contentment anyway. You don't have to believe that wealth accumulation is the answer to all of one's problems.
Thank you.
Sure, sure. And so I think it does reinforce what you're saying, Pamela. I kind of went on. I apologize.
No, I was questioning, not saying, making a
Yeah.
statement. I just was wondering because I'm kind of jumping in after not having been here for a while. So I
Ah,
didn't know the framework where we are. That's why.
that's fair enough. All right. Let's go to the next verse, unless Sylvia, do you have anything you want to add to that? Okay. Then let's do the last verse of chapter 5. Ki lo harbe yizkor et yemei chayav. Ki Elohim ma'aneh b'simcha libo. For not much. Well, let's go with the translation here because it's a strange construct. For such a man will not brood much over the days of his life, because God keeps him busy enjoying himself. So the contentment, right? The thought of which is depressing. See verse 16, right? He won't brood much over the days of his life. I think brooding is kind of this idea of being depressed about it all. Isn't that how you would translate to brood in this case?
Mhm.
Um, for God answers or responds with the joy of his heart. Um, it's actually very sweet for all those who say it's all pessimism. It's actually suggesting that, we can find contentment without having everything go perfectly in our lives.
I like this too because so much of the time I feel like I am dealing with my discontent by doing more, being in charge of stuff, whatever. But this says step back and it says it because God keeps him busy enjoying himself. That's a different thing. That's a different approach to dealing with discontent.
Right. Yeah.
Um, the 1917 is so different, though. It doesn't say enjoy. It says, "For God answereth him in the joy of his heart," not God keeps him busy enjoying himself. Which is the Hebrew? Which makes more sense with the Hebrew?
I think what you're saying, for God answers with the joy of his heart, or God
Hmm.
responds, or causes answers. It's almost it's a he feel, which means God causes his, God causes an answer. We don't really have that in English,
Hmm.
but God, see how on the right side it says ma'aneh, to
Mhm.
answer or respond, versus anah. Oh, ma'aneh, they're saying is more of a noun because God, the answering is in the joy of his heart, something along those lines. But I think the bottom line is that whatever one's struggle is, God is providing contentment. That's how I read this. So I think the first part is, despite how hard life is, God can provide some level of joy. And I actually think that's a beautiful, look, this is why some people get really into God, or for that matter, in Christian circles, Jesus. There's this way in which there's salvation that comes from faith, from confidence in God. And I think maybe that's how this is interpreted. But I think it's really talking about the material world in this instance. So it's very interesting.
Well, and also it's not just yeah, it's not a reflection of like when we start said on the last line that you you live a more righteous life, you get more stuff, you get more gifts. It's more of, at the very end, you need to enjoy what God has given you, right? Whatever that level is.
Yeah,
Because if you spend your time thinking about what you don't have in your life, which is the first part of the verse, then you won't get to enjoying what God has given you, which is a way of saying thanks, right?
right. Well, and Rashi breaks this into a bunch of different ideas, which I wish I could show them all at once, but he breaks this up into kilo harbeh because there's not that much, meaning much days in the world, right? Our lives are shortened. Yizkore yemei chayav. It's listed as a command. Remember the days of one's life. Let him remember the days of his life. And then he adds, for they are few and not many. So why then should he bother to accumulate wealth? Let him labor with something that endures for him in the world to come during his lifetime. So, like, don't lose priority over why you're doing this work in this world. It's not just to accumulate wealth, which is actually a great lesson.
Mhm.
For God answers with the joy of the heart. Well, so the Holy One, blessed is He, bears a permanent testimony about this eternally, is how he makes sense of it. There's one more comment, I think. With the joy of his heart, that he rejoiced to do good in his lifetime. And I saw in the Midrash that this refers to Elkanah, who led Israel up to Shiloh on the festivals and on the route, that he brought them up on 1 year. He did not bring them back the following year in order to publicize the matter and to accustom them. I'm not sure all of what this is referencing. Therefore, scripture praises him. This man would go up from his city, etc.
That's Hannah's husband. That's the
Right,
story in Shmuel. Yeah.
right. Book of Samuel. I believe that this midrash is at the end of the verse, for God answers him with the joy of his heart. That's Ki Elohim ma'aneh b'simchat libo. This is Elkanah, whom the Holy One of Blessing established in Scripture and testifies about him. This man would go up from his city. Okay, all right. And there's two more. Oh, answers him. So we were discussing this word ma'aneh, and I was saying, is it a verb or is it a noun? He says, I explain it as a noun, as in, for there was no answer in the mouths of the three men. Okay, so we get a little grammar lesson from Rashi. And then simchat libo, with the joy of his heart, that he was happy on the festival, referring back, I think, to Elkanah. He doubles down on the Elkanah. So that's our chapter 5. So we're
Thank you.
halfway done. 5 out of 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
Well,
So
I
Elkanah,
appreciate this.
You bet.
so Elkanah was happy. His wife was not. She felt lacking. She wanted a child. There's a little comparison there too, right? Or I'm not
Yes.
sure.
Yes,
Or
but
is
then
this later
I think
after
this
she?
is a different part of that narrative around Elkanah.
Well,
Okay.
actually, no. When it starts out, because I've read this for Yom Kippur many years. It's like the description of who he is.
Okay. So he's
It's
a
like the first
fairly,
line of the story.
so he's like this happy guy. So he really doesn't understand why she would be, disappointed in her life,
Yeah, so
because he in general just accepts things as they come.
right. So here's the beginning of First
Oh,
Samuel.
thank you.
There was a man from Ramatayim of the Zuphites in the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, and he had two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah didn't. This man used to go up from his town every year to worship and to offer sacrifices to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh. Hophni and Pinchas, the two sons of Eli, were priests of God there.
So that's where the line comes from, right there.
Right.
We used to go up.
In the reference that Rashi gives, yes.
Right.
So, yeah, it's very interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the point, of course, being that why would he offer offerings? Because in the minds of Rashi, it had to have been for Chagim, for holidays. Even though the text itself does not really explain that. All it says he would go up every year. We don't know when, but he interprets it to be what it is.
Do you see what the word for sacrifice is? Maybe that tells what it is.
No, uh, nope. It just says Veliz Boach,
Okay.
like Zvachim, Zevach. So I think if I go backwards enough, yeah, we can go back to where we were. That's weird that it says 6 when it's actually on 5. There we go. Okay. This is what we just finished. With the joy of his heart, went up on the festivals. So here the Midrash suggests that he went up a whole bunch of times. Okay, well, lo chashuv, not that important, but very interesting. Thank you for the two of you for making it. I'll
You're
upload
welcome.
this and it'll get posted, God willing, later this evening on Facebook and YouTube and all that good stuff. Okay?
Okay. All
Sounds
right.
good. Thank
Shabbat
Shabbat
you.
shalom.
shalom
Shabbat
and Shavua
shalom.
tov.
Shabbat tov.
Yeah.
Soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.